Hey guys, this is Jay Calderon with Jay Unboxing here, kind of giving you a bit of a recap as well as some of my takeaways for the Fight Camp Series 2 Night 1 that took place at MATCHROOM headquarters in Essex. And in case you missed the card entirely, I'll give you sort of a brief rundown here of the results. We had Leigh Wood defeating Zhu Khan via 12th round technical knockout for a kind of portion of the featherweight title. Of course, the title situation in all the divisions is a little bit messy, so I'll spare you, but he kind of won a fringe version of the title in a pretty massive upset there. In the co-featured bout, my favorite fight of the evening, we had Billam-Smith defeat Tommy McCarthy to win the European and Commonwealth titles as well as the vacant British Cruiserweight title via split decision after 12. We also saw the fourth fight of Campbell Hatton, son of Ricky Hatton, as he defeated Jacob Laskowski via four-round decision at lightweight. Anthony Fowler also defeated Rico Mueller via eight-round technical knockout at junior middleweight, and Jack Cullen defeated Avni Yildirim via 10-round unanimous decision at super middleweight. Also, it should be noted originally on the card we had Conor Benn as the headliner taking on Adrian Granados in a welterweight clash, but Ben ultimately came up with a positive test and as a result of that had to withdraw from the bout, leaving it scrapped from the card entirely. So instead of anything in particular order, just kind of, going with a specific fight, I'm just going to give you a few takeaways that I have from the overall card, as it's kind of a jumbled card because of the circumstances anyway. So as a result of that, let's get into it with Campbell Hatton and his victory over Jacob Laskowski and the positives and negatives I see in the sort of son of a legend here. And the first one I have to say as a negative is the kind of thing I just mentioned there, which is the son of a legend thing. I understand the narrative. I understand how it sells the fighter and potentially the fights, but ultimately, I think it's leading to a little bit of confusion as to kind of what fighter he is or should become, both in terms of how we interpret him as a fighter, but also in terms of how he expresses himself as a fighter. He needs to be able to find himself, and I think you're not going to do that with literally after every single round you're panning the cameras over to Hatton, Ricky Hatton, that being his father, out in the crowd, looking on at his son and kind of, just getting a gauge for him in between every single round. I understand it's still early in his career, and I understand he is a famous fighter, in a country that loved him, with his son now being a boxer, but I just don't know if it's doing Campbell any favors having this constantly thrown both in his and our faces. I just think he needs to be let out to be kind of on his own a little bit, especially as it pertains to his style. I do think he's kind of at a crossroads here where he's maybe trying to be a little more of a boxer puncher than his father was, who was more of a brawler. I also think sometimes he's trying to live up to that image of being a bit more of a brawler. And I don't know which one he is. He's still young and he didn't have the most extensive amateur career. So he, I'm sure, is trying to figure out a little bit of who he is as well. That being said, I think the way he's being moved along is a positive thing because that's going to really be the only way to get to the truth of what kind of fighter he truly is. He's being moved right now, I believe, in the 5 months or so that he's been a professional now, he's already had 3 fights. And to me, that's good because if you continue to, extrapolate that sort of busyness, within a year, he's already going to have anywhere from 10 to 15 fights. And I think for someone with less amateur pedigree and who is kind of caught in that in between area of who he's going to be as a fighter, I think that's very good to just kind of let him figure that out in the ring with fighters that are at or even a little below his level, of course, to try and let him continue to win, but sort of not just pick up victories, pick up experience and knowledge of self as to who he is as a fighter. Again, that could be someone who jabs a little more than his father did, maybe uses a little more foot movement like his father did. It could be a hybrid of a lot of things, but I think he needs the time to find that. And I also think that the best way to do that is keeping him busy. He's young, he's hungry to learn, it looks like, and I think the best way for him to learn, to continue to settle down, which he did a little bit more of in this fight, which is also another positive that I noticed. I think you just need to get him out there more and more, and the way they're moving him is definitely one of the bigger positives that I've seen thus far. Does seem to have a decent jab when he kind of keeps it sort of looking as professional as possible. When he doesn't let it stray too much, doesn't throw from too far out or too bad an angle. If he just settles in and allows the jab to go out, his jab is pretty decent as well. So definitely were some positives there, but would like to see, the development of his true style and his true self as he progresses. Next, we'll move on to Billam-Smith capturing the Commonwealth, British, and European gold at cruiserweight in a split decision nod over Tommy McCarthy. So, first things first, it was a very good fight that could have gone either way. I did pick McCarthy by a very close decision, actually a split decision the other way in my prediction. And I did actually score the fight for him by a single round when I was kind of loosely watching with a scoring mentality in mind. That being said, it's not one of those fights that you can argue too much over. I mean, I think in terms of total punches, there was a single punch, I believe, in Billam-Smith's favor that really made the difference. Of course, the jabbing contest was won by McCarthy. I'm pretty sure Billam-Smith would have said that was probably going to happen leading into the fight. But overall, you have to judge these on a round by round basis, and it was very close. Definitely a fight that I think, like I said, could have gone either way. In terms of what you learn from them, it's kind of interesting because you didn't learn about both fighters. They fought basically how you thought they would. You know, Billam-Smith was coming forward. He was trying to be the more aggressor. He seemed to have more power in his shots. He seemed to, be able to move his man a little bit more when he did land clean. He also was a little bit stiff and upright at times, and he was a little easy to hit at times and time and target at times. When it comes to McCarthy, you had a guy who was a slicker fighter who was going to probably pop out that jab a little bit more, and he was going to be the one that was probably a little more defensively responsible overall. But he also was a guy who, because he does have some awkward moments in his fight, he's able to, get thrown off balance a little bit more and push back a little bit more. So you really just saw the very best versions that they could give of themselves in the fight. The only thing you did learn about them was just could they actually keep it going and show the sort of heart that's necessary to fight through a very tough and draining 12 rounds? And that they did show, and that's what we did learn from them. A very, very good fight nonetheless. A lot of ebbs and flows in it. Very good to watch. Very fun, watchable fight as well, with very fun, contrasting styles. And regardless of what you thought of who should have won or how close it was or wasn't, or the scorecards, whatever it might be, it's definitely a fight that deserves a rematch. An immediate one seems to make sense to me. Should be easy enough to make, and definitely something that hopefully can get made even by perhaps the end of this year. Very good fight. And finally, in the newly formed main event, we had Leigh Wood pulling off the rather massive upset, stopping Zhu Khan in the final round for a fringe world title at featherweight. Again, another solid fight. Really did go back and forth, and Khan seemed at times to be slightly the better fighter, but also seemed to let Wood stay in the fight a little more, and also took time off. He just seemed, I don't know if it wasn't that it was exactly himself, or maybe it was Wood just doing a little bit too much. I mean, Wood, he underestimated. Maybe Wood was just showing another level. Whatever it was, you did see that Leigh would, at times, put together punches really well. They stayed snappy throughout the fight. He definitely showed, an ability to stay in the fight. And even when it was close after 6, 7, 8 rounds, where maybe you had it one way, one round for one or the other, it was just a fight that, to me, never looked like Khan settled into it, even if he was winning by a round or two. Versus Wood, who maybe he was losing by a round or two, but he looked like he was just getting into rhythm more and more. And that obviously told the final story when he stopped Khan, the betting favorite, especially in this fight, in the 12th and final round. And again, we got to say, and I want to make sure I'm stressing this, to his credit, Wood boxed the fight of his life and was getting stronger and stronger as the rounds were progressing. An amazing night for him. What makes boxing so fun to see these kind of upsets? That's what I love about the sport. And I don't want to make it seem like, oh, Khan just had an off night. Part of that, I think, was the fact that Wood just kept coming on, was doing very basic things, turning them, had a great 1-2 going. So I don't want to make it seem like it was just Khan being off. I think Wood just had, put in a great performance. But it was just Khan did not. I've seen a few of Khan's fights, a couple of highlights here and there as well, and he just has looked a little more fluid, a little more comfortable at times. And again, maybe it was something with him and a combination of Leigh Wood just being a better fighter than he thought and just being a better fighter than he could handle on the night, whatever it was. Still a great performance from Wood, and congratulations to him kind of picking up that portion of the title or portion of the portion or whatever you want to call it. Final thought I had on that fight, too, and this is a bit unfortunate, a little bit of a dark thought, I suppose. But I remember prior to his first fight with Mauricio Lara, Josh Warrington was set to face Zukon for that portion of the featherweight title. He even gave up his portion of the title that he held to have this fight. And instead of actually getting through Mauricio Lara and facing him as a late replacement, because Khan, I believe, was not accepted as a fight for some reason or some technicality nonsense in boxing. Khan then ends up going on and fighting Leigh Wood and losing, while Warrington then goes and fights the at the time unheralded Lara and getting knocked out and suffering his first career defeat. I mean, it's just got to be one of those things where Warrington is kind of kicking himself too. It's again slightly a morbid thought, but it is the first thought that came to mind when this fight happened. And then in my head thinking, wow, what if Khan actually loses on this fight? Because you never know. He's fighting away from home. against a home fighter. You never know what might happen. And then on top of that, forget the cards, you end up getting knocked out anyway. So it was one of my first thoughts, I have to admit, and it's just a tricky world to try and navigate is the boxing scene. In any event, let me know what you guys thought of the card, who you were impressed with, who you were not so impressed with. Let me know your thoughts on all that. What would you think of the McCarthy Billam-Smith result? How kind of surprised were you by the Leigh Wood win? What do you think of Campbell Hatton and his progression thus far? We'd love to hear all that stuff down in the comments below. Be sure to like, follow, share, subscribe, and follow me on Twitter at jcalderon_JOB. You can email me at junboxing@gmail.com. And of course, please visit junboxing for betting results or betting averages, all these sort of things, and odds, results. Great schedule on there as well. Got the rankings on there. Be sure to check all that out. And as always, until next time.